I first met Kim when I was 6 and I found her alone in our backyard. My screen attracted my mom, who came running to see what the problem was, and she was also surprised when she saw a strange child in the backyard. She didn't understand what was happening until a few seconds later when a large sweaty man ran into our backyard. The strange child laughed as soon as she saw him, and he picked her up and held her in his arms. He apologized profusely, and then we realized that he was her father. It seemed like she had slipped away when no one was looking and had somehow found her way into our backyard. The man was a new neighbor who had just moved in a week ago and was still getting used to the neighborhood. That was how I met Kim, or at least that's how I remember it, although Kim swears it happened in a whole different way. Within a year, Amanda, Freya, and Clara had moved into the neighborhood too, and pretty soon we all became friends, bonded by our mutual likeness for causing mischief. We were inseparable in the years that followed, and we all had just turned 20. Out of all of us in the group, I was the most attractive and desirable because of my model-like features that included my thin waist, tall height, and slim, long legs. Kim was the richest and the most spoiled, as she always got whatever she wanted because her parents could afford it. There was a boy who lived around. He was not part of our group, but we all knew him, and he knew us too. His name was Fika, and he was a tall, athletic-looking guy. He was handsome too, and one day Kim confessed to us that she had a crush on him. We all teased her about it, and she made us promise not to tell anyone. I was on my way to Kim's house one day when I saw Fika coming in the opposite direction. It seemed like he was coming towards me. I smiled at him and waved, expecting him to walk past me when he stopped right in front of me.
Hey, Pen.
Hey, Fika.
Do you have a moment, please?
It depends. What do you want to talk about? I asked, hesitantly.
I want to talk about you.
Oh, really? What about me? He hesitated, and I saw him fidgeting with his hands in his pockets. It seemed like he was sweating too, which was a bit strange, as it was a very cold day and he was in a hoodie. He paused for a while, and I was beginning to grow impatient with him when he finally spoke up.
Pen, I just want to let you know that I like you and I'd like you to be my girlfriend,
he said as he avoided my gaze. What did you say? I was shocked out of my mind, but just before he could talk, I cut him off and rejected him on the spot. I told him that it was never going to happen, and I told him not to ever ask me out again. I walked off, still feeling freaked out. How could he like me? Didn't he know that Kim had a massive crush on him, and I could never date him because of that? I wasn't ready to ruin my friendship with Kim because of a guy I barely knew. Although I told Fika not to disturb me again, I found him almost everywhere I went. It was like he always knew my whereabouts, no matter how hard I tried to hide from him. At some point, I wondered if he was tracking me. How come he always found me so easily? He always brought me gifts whenever he saw me, gifts ranging from cards to chocolates, and one time, he even brought a huge teddy bear, but I instantly rejected all of it, and continued to avoid him whenever I could. One day, Kim, who was almost always the mastermind of most of our mischief adventures, suddenly came up with a random plan. She said that she had caught my neighbor, Mr. Longhair, cheating on his wife, and that he had offered to bribe her by offering to let her take his Jaguar out for a ride. The 5 of us were all together when she told us. Really? When did this happen? I asked, curious.
Oh, a couple of days ago. I was walking by this house when I saw a strange car parked in his driveway. I knew it didn't belong to his wife, so I decided to snoop a little. One of these days, your snooping is gonna get you in trouble. Maybe, but today, it got us a ride in a sweet Jaguar,
Kim said, smiling mischievously.
So we all get to ride in the car?
Freya asked.
Of course, we can all take turns driving it. It's gonna be legendary.
So when are we gonna get to drive the car?
He said that tomorrow would be okay. Anytime from 9 p.m.
So we decided that, since my house was closest to Mr. Longhair's and he knew me, I was going to be the one to collect the car keys from him and was to drive the car to a particular junction where the others would be waiting for me and we could begin our joyride. The following night came, and a few minutes past 9, I was in front of Mr. Longhair's. I had never been in a Jaguar before, and I was also going to be the first of us to drive it. I pressed the doorbell and had to wait for a few seconds before I heard movement, and Mr. Longhair opened the door.
Come in.
He invited me to come in, and as soon as I did, I felt 2 strong hands grab me into a hug, and before I knew it, I felt a kiss on my face. It took me a while to realize that it was Mr. Longhair that did it, and as soon as I regained my senses, I landed him 2 quick successive slaps after I succeeded in pushing him off. He threw the car keys at me and he ran off into a room in the house. What a weirdo! Click the subscribe button and drop a like in this video if you know you're not a weirdo. I grabbed the keys and walked out of his house, still annoyed. I got into his car and drove off to meet my friends at the agreed location, but no one was there, and after waiting for a long time, I picked up the phone to call Kim, but her phone was switched off. I tried Freya, and thankfully she picked up. But she informed me that Kim told her that the plan was called off because Mr. Longhair had already confessed to his wife. After the call, I began to feel uneasy. Something was wrong. As soon as I stepped out of the car, I was suddenly surrounded on all sides by policemen and was promptly arrested. They opened the boot of the car and found all sorts of stolen items in it, and I was charged for car theft and possession of stolen items. I was given 5 years in prison, and while serving my time, the only person that regularly came to visit was FICA. One day, he showed me a newspaper article about me, showing pictures of Mr. Longhair kissing me. They had written all sorts of unbelievable and untrue things about me, which made me cry. I told FICA everything that had happened, and he believed me. He also suggested that Kim must have been behind it all along, which I agreed with. The 5 years passed quickly, and on the day of my release, FICA was there to pick me up, but when we got to the parking lot, staring back at me were the same people who didn't come to visit me once while I was in prison. As soon as Kim saw FICA, she went into a rage, screaming at him and inadvertently confessing all she had done, while also yelling at me that I deserved everything that she did to me since I was dating FICA. I looked at my other friends and was surprised when they didn't seem shocked at the revelation. They had found out a while ago, but Kim threatened them to keep quiet about it. They said they felt guilty about it, so they couldn't visit me while I was in prison. I just stood there, shocked and unable to move. I was shocked that my friends, who I had grown up with and had known all of these years, would do something like this to me. A few minutes passed before I calmed down and quietly told them to leave. "You should all leave." But, Clara started to speak, but I cut her off. "I said leave, and I never want to see any one of you ever again. You all disgust me. If you could treat a friend like this, I pity each and every one of you because you're all friends to each other too."
You aren't my friend. You never were. Friends don't steal each other's man.
It was then that FICA spoke up.
I'm not your man, Kim. I never was, and I never will be.
As soon as Kim heard this, she let out another scream and they got into their car and drove off angrily. Unbeknownst to me, while we were out in the opening having this conversation, some security guards who were nearby had heard this exchange, and using their testimony, I was able to clear my name before Kim was able to bribe or threaten them, as well as implicate Kim and Mr. Longhair for what they had done. Mr. Longhair and Kim were then arrested and were required to pay a huge amount of money as bail. They were also handed jail sentences corresponding to the gravity and weight of their offense, and all through the trial and sentencing, Kim showed no remorse for her actions or any remorse for setting her friend up because of stupid jealousy. Amanda, Freya, and Clara were also arrested, but they were handed suspended sentences because they initially had no idea about what Kim had done. Throughout this traumatic ordeal, FICA and I grew closer, and I began to see him for who he was. He was kind, honest, and understanding. He had been the only one who had been with me throughout, even when my friends had abandoned me. It did not take long before we began to date, and after much talk and deliberation, we decided to travel to a foreign country and start afresh there. We wanted to start a new life. We finally settled in a country, and we had lived there for about 5 years when one day we were on one of its exotic beaches. I was under a beach umbrella, lying on my belly and enjoying a good book, and FICA, who was now my husband, had gone to get us some drinks when I felt a tap on my back and a voice following it.
Excuse me, miss. Can I talk to you?
The voice said. "Yes," I replied, turning to face the person, and as soon as my eyes saw him, I screamed at the top of my voice. It was Mr. Longhair! What was he doing here? How did he find me? My scream alerted FICA, and in a flash, he was by my side. As soon as he saw Mr. Longhair, he moved towards him menacingly with his fist tightly clenched, but he soon stopped quickly. This was not Mr. Longhair as we first thought. but his first son, who is almost a spitting image of him, albeit younger. He apologized for startling me, and Fika unclenched his fists. He then explained to us that his dad was somewhere on the beach and had spotted us, but was hesitant to approach us as he didn't know how he'd react. So he sent his son to us instead. He wanted to apologize to me about what had happened all those years ago and for the part that he played in it. He also wanted to ask for forgiveness from me. I thought about it for a while before I told him to inform his father that I had accepted his apology and forgiven him. He left quickly. I really didn't need his apology, but I felt a little bit better that he did apologize. Don't forget to join us next time for more stories like this, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Hi there, my name is Madeline and I'm from Los Angeles. Ever wondered if it was possible for a quiet college student to end up being the most feared person in juvie? Let me tell you how, but first, please like and subscribe. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was an 8-year-old genius and I was being called to the stage to collect my huge trophy for winning a science competition.
In first place, Madeline Jones.
Everyone cheered and I was beaming. I was already halfway across the stage when the announcer looked confused.
Oops, it seems that there's been a mix-up. The winner is actually Tyler Lee. I'm sorry, Madeline.
Everyone started laughing. I walked off the stage in shame and ran to the bathroom to cry. My friends tried to comfort me, but it was no use. After that day, I decided that something like this would never happen to me again. I'd have to become a perfectionist and be the absolute best at everything. And that's exactly what I did. I never lost another competition again, and I was always at the top of my class. I waltzed through the school's entrance on my first day at senior high school and tried to find my way around, but then I saw him. And I swear my mind went completely blank. He was perfect, and as he stared back at me, I could feel myself melting. It was like my mind and my body weren't connected. I walked forward and then, bam! I tripped and hit my nose on a locker. I could hear laughter all around me, and when I looked up, he was gone. I shamefully walked to my first class and sat down.
Hey, look, it's Rudolph. Your nose is really red.
I wanted to disappear. As the week went by, it seemed that no one remembered what happened, so at least I had that going for me. But that Friday, I ended up spilling water all over my backpack, and I had to carry my books everywhere. While I was rushing from math to physics class, I jumped straight into someone and my books fell on his feet. When I looked up to see who it was, I froze. He gazed into my eyes, and I think I nearly stopped breathing. Hey, cutie. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Don't worry about it. By the way, what's your number? I gave it to him, and then he helped me pick up my books. I gotta run now. Talk to you tonight. I couldn't believe it. Did this hunk think I was attractive too? I watched him walk away and stared at his magnificent body, but I was suddenly nudged by 2 pretty senior girls.
Hey, I'm Angela. Listen, I saw Blaze checking you out, and I just wanted to warn you. He's no good.
What do you mean?
He's involved in some pretty bad stuff.
Like what?
He's in a gang, and he's been involved in all sorts of criminal stuff. Even the teachers here are afraid of him. He can do whatever he wants. The principal won't say a thing. That's how dangerous he is. I know he's cute and whatever, but I've heard you're a really smart girl, and it would be a shame to throw your life away for a guy like him.
Wow, okay, thanks for letting me know. They walked off, and I went to my next class. Later that night, I got a text from Blaze. What do you think I did? Turn my phone off and walk away? No way! Dangerous or not, he was hot, and that's all that mattered to me. We started off by texting each other, but we had so much to say that he just called me, and we ended up talking until about 2 in the morning. I never imagined that I could fall for a guy so quickly, but it was happening. Our first date was super romantic. He took me to a little spot in the mall I didn't know about, and we got some fancy desserts. I love cake, but I loved staring at his gorgeous face even more, and every time he said my name, I melted a little inside. He stared at me like he was falling for me too. We went out a few more times, and he'd always been the perfect gentleman. I don't know what Angela was talking about until one night while we were strolling near the park after an ice cream date. A guy wearing purple crossed the street and started walking towards us. He looked really angry. "No, Madeline, we have to run." "What?" "Just take my hand and follow me." We ran for 10 minutes until we reached an isolated alley. "Who is he?" "He's a part of a rival gang and they're out to get us. I'm sorry you had to see that. I mean, I could take him on, but I'm trying to be a gentleman in front of my lady." Then he went on to tell me about his life in the gang, but all I heard was blah, 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 because I could only focus on one thing. "Did you just call me your lady?" "Yeah. Actually, I was meaning to ask you something tonight." "What's that?" "Will you be my girlfriend?" "Of course, Blaze. I thought you'd never ask." "So you accept me and all my awful things I've told you about my life?" "Sure, I'll even join you if you want." The next week, everyone at school knew about our relationship because we were always hugging or walking hand in hand. Angela wouldn't give up, though. She saw me in the bathroom one day and tried to talk me out of my relationship. "I told you, Blaze is not a good guy. He's nothing but trouble, and you're putting yourself in harm's way." "Why do you care so much?" "Because you seem like such a great person, and he's a real jerk. We're just trying to protect you. I really hope you listen. It will save you lots of trouble in the long run." I rudely told her to get lost, and she left the room looking like she was about to cry. Later on that day, I felt sorry about that, so I went to look for her. I thought she'd be near her locker, as the bell had just rung for us to change classes, but she wasn't. I noticed that her locker was slightly open, and the curious part of me decided to take a peek. You won't believe what I found. There was a picture of Blaze stuck to the inside of the locker door. She had decorated it with little hearts, and on the bottom she wrote, "Someday you will be mine." I couldn't believe it. She had a crush on Blaze, and she was trying to get me to leave him alone so she could have him for herself. At that moment, I just wanted to embarrass her, so I said loudly, "Hey everyone, come see what Angela has in her locker." As the crowd gathered, I showed them what was inside. Some people took pictures while others just stared and laughed. Angela walked towards us looking confused. "So you just wanted to steal my boyfriend, huh?" "What? No, I didn't put that there." "Liar, so much for trying to protect me." I walked away and left her there to soak up the shame. My relationship with Blaze continued to grow. We did everything together. During the day, I helped him with his schoolwork, and at nights, I went with him and his gang on their nightly escapades. They were a pretty rough bunch, but they were nice to me because I was his girlfriend. I learned a lot, like how to pick a lock without anyone noticing and how to shoplift without getting caught. I could even hotwire a car. I started doing loads of things that would probably get me in trouble if I couldn't do them properly. Then one day, the leader of the gang asked me to join, and I agreed. Anything to be with Blaze and to make him happy. So I had to do more complicated things now. I participated in a home invasion, and it was scary as heck. We also did about 5 robberies and were successful each time. But my academic life was blossoming too. I was still the perfect student at school, and I had better grades than anyone else. My principal called me into his office one day for a meeting, and he told me that because my record was so flawless, he'd agreed to write me a stellar recommendation to get into one of the best Ivy League colleges in the world. When I told my parents, they were so proud, but I always wondered how me going to college would affect Blaze. Obviously, I wanted to gaze into his handsome eyes for the rest of my life. But have you ever heard about a perfect relationship between a gang member and an astrophysicist? It was hard for me to think about, so I tried not to. I just continued being an angel by day and a devil by night. But the devil part was getting harder because I kept getting assigned to more difficult tasks. Me and 3 other guys were told to burn down a rival gang member's house one night, so we went there and started doing what we had to do. It was a pretty isolated area, so we didn't have to worry about getting caught. But just as we were about to get into the getaway car, we noticed a girl standing by a tree. "Hey, I think we have a witness."
Get her.
"What?"
We have no choice. We have to kidnap her.
One of the guys ran and caught her by the arms. He carried her and put her in the trunk of the car as we sped off.
They drove to another isolated area and parked in front of an old building. They tied the little girl up in there, and later, some other guys arrived. So what do we do with her?
You know what happens to witnesses.
I tried to plead with them because she was so young, but they wouldn't listen. Then they left the room for a while and I was alone with her.
You're Madeline. I've heard of you before.
What? Who are you?
My dad is your principal.
Oh my gosh.
Please set me free. I won't tell anyone that you were here.
I waited until everyone had left or had fallen asleep. Then I untied her. I drove her to her parents' house, then went quietly back to mine. But the next morning, I woke up to sirens. There were cops all over my house and my parents looked confused.
You're under arrest for arson and kidnapping.
Wait, what?
The child told us everything.
As a police car drove me away, I looked out the window and saw Blaze and some other guys from the gang hiding around the street corner. One of them signaled to me that as soon as I got out, I'd be done for.
Hi, my name is Beatrice, and I'm from a little town in Michigan. Ever since we were little, my sister Angela and I competed in everything. Grades, boys, mom's attention, everything. I always won. Angela didn't even come close. But one day, she did. Pencils and ripped papers flew in the air and scattered everywhere. I held scissors in one hand and a blowtorch in the other. Angela cowered in a corner of the room, terrified and helpless. You call this art? I kicked one of the drawing books like it was a football. I'm gonna burn it all today. Beatrice, don't. Or what? Mom bought me those. Doesn't mean you deserve them. The blowtorch slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. Angela and I fought for it, but she didn't match my strength. Jealousy and rage were fueling me. I held the blowtorch ready to light it and grabbed her tattered drawing book. She took another step forward, and before she could take another one, I set her book on fire and pointed the blowtorch at her. Don't come any closer, Angela. She stood back, horrified. I never meant to scare her, but I was too enraged to care or let her save the book. You must be wondering what's going on here. Do you want to find out? Then please subscribe and keep watching. Angela was not book smart, but she was a great artist. I hated that I couldn't draw as well as her. Mom praised her and showed off her drawings to all her friends. One day, we came home from school to find an expensive set of pencils and a new drawing book on the kitchen table. The moment Angela saw them, her eyes lit up. There was a note from Mom congratulating her for winning the latest school art competition. And that's how I found myself with a pair of scissors and a blowtorch in my hands. She was inconsolable, and tears mixed with mascara rolled down her face. I was grounded, of course, but that didn't stop me from sneaking out whenever I wanted. I was hurrying down the school hallway when someone rounded a corner and walked right into me. My bag slipped from my shoulder and fell to the floor, spilling books and pens everywhere. Watch where you're going. Why don't you watch where you're going? You clearly bumped into me, I was about to say something really mean, but my anger evaporated when I saw that it was Cliff, my longtime crush. Oh. Hey, I'm Beatrice. He bent to collect my bags and the books that had fallen out. That's when I saw it. One of Angela's ugly drawing books with her ugly drawings on display. How did it even get in my bag? Cliff was staring at it. Oh no. Did he think that I drew that? He picked up the book and flipped through a few pages. Did you draw all these? Of course not. These are incredible. You're so talented. Can we maybe hang out after school so I can see all of them? Wait, what? He liked them? Okay, I needed to make a choice. Fast. I could A, tell Cliff the truth that the drawing book was not mine, or B, lie to him and get to hang out with him. What would you choose if you were me? A or B? Earth to Beatrice, hello. Oh, sorry, did you say something? Can we hang out later? Sure. Did he even have to ask? I spent the rest of the day smiling and daydreaming about Cliff. Every time we passed each other in the hallways, he smiled and winked at me. Also, did you notice that I never told him that the drawings were mine? I just let him think they were. So I didn't exactly lie, right? Cliff lived in a freaking palace. The first time he invited me over, my jaw dropped. Wow, are you like rich? I blurted out without thinking and Cliff laughed.
Nah, this is my grandpa's house. He's the rich one. I've lived with him since my parents died.
Aww, Cliff was telling me his life story and this made me feel so close to him.
Did you bring the book?
I was confused for a minute and then I remembered Angela's stupid book. Ugh. I took it out of my bag and handed it to him. For the next hour or so, Cliff admired the drawings in the book instead of focusing on me. Like, hello? Did he not know that he was sitting in the presence of the prettiest girl in school? Ugh, boys could be so annoying. He finally looked up from the book, smiling. We were on the couch, so I slid closer to him.
How about you draw me?
What? I stood up too fast, tripped on a coffee table, and went sprawling on the carpet. Talk about embarrassing.
You're quite clumsy.
Cliff was laughing as he helped me sit up.
So, how about I pose for you right here?
I was so busted. I couldn't even draw a straight line, you guys.
Come on, B, please.
He made the most adorable face and called me B. No one ever called me that before. However, my mind was racing and I had to come up with an excuse. I don't have my pencils right now.
I have some.
I only use mine.
We can go get them.
I left them at school and, it's closed at this time.
We can go buy some.
I don't have any money on me.
I do.
Ah, well, I was out of excuses. Just then, his phone rang and I was so relieved. It was his grandpa calling. He needed Cliff to run an errand. Phew, that was close. It wasn't until I got home that I realized that I'd left Angela's book with Cliff. Looking back, I realized that this was the beginning of my downfall. The next day at school, Cliff snuck up on me and covered my eyes with his hand.
Guess what I'm holding?
I didn't get the chance to answer him because Angela interrupted us.
Where did you get that?
Cliff uncovered my eyes and what I saw filled me with fear.
B left this at my house yesterday. I'm just returning it to her.
I've been looking everywhere for that book.
She snatched it from Cliff, but before she could say anything else, the bell rang. Cliff walked away and so did Angela, but not before she gave me the death stare. I knew I was in trouble. After school, I went home dreading what Angela was going to do. What if she told Cliff that the book was hers and not mine? He'd never speak to me again. I pushed our front door open and I couldn't believe what I saw. Angela was taking cash from Mom's wallet. Are you stealing from Mom? I'm so going to tell.
You have no proof.
Oh yeah? I quickly took a photo of her with the wallet in her hands. Say cheese! She tried to snatch my phone, but I jumped out of the way. I own you now. What do you want? I thought about it for a minute and came up with the perfect idea. I want you to draw a portrait of Cliff and give it to me. Also, you're not gonna tell him that the ugly book belongs to you.
Why?
No questions, just do it.
Geez, okay, but you say a single word to Mom about this, and the deal is off.
I sent Angela a selfie of Cliff, and a few days later, she was done. I had to admit, she'd done a great job. At school, I gave Cliff the portrait, and he was so impressed that he kissed me for the first time. My friends practically worshipped me after that. They wanted to know how it felt kissing the hottest boy in school. I loved their attention and their obvious jealousy. A week later, Cliff walked into class excited.
B, I have great news. Grandpa Zeus saw the portrait you did for me and loved it so much. He wants to pose for you so you can do a full one of him. He's offering you a lot of money.
Pose for me.
Yeah, at the mansion. Once you're done, he'll throw a big party to unveil it and show it off.
The pressure was becoming too much. Can I think about it? Cliff's excitement disappeared instantly.
What's there to think about?
I don't know,
You have to do it, B. Grandpa is all I have left, and the portrait would make him so happy. Not to mention, you'll be rich.
I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and ran out of class, leaving a confused Cliff behind. That evening, I told my family everything, including the part about blackmailing Angela for stealing. Angela was furious.
You stole my drawing book and used it to get yourself a boyfriend?
What does it matter? I'm gonna lose, Cliff.
Stop talking, both of you. We will not lose this opportunity. Angela, you'll draw the old man. It's the least you could do after you stole my money. And Beatrice, I will deal with you later. Now here's the plan.
Mom's plan was genius. I would agree to do the portrait, and when Cliff's grandpa took his pose, I'd take a photo and send it to Angela. She'd be at home with all her tools, ready to draw an exact image of the photo. I, on the other hand, would pretend to draw the old man. On the day of the party, Mom would sneak the portrait into the mansion disguised as a cleaning lady and would swap it with my blank one. Perfect, right? What could go wrong? Apparently, everything. A few days later, Angela was done. On the morning of the unveiling party, Mom snuck in and handed me the portrait. Angela had wrapped it in paper, just like Mr. Zeus had requested me to do. We swapped them easily and she left with the blank one. I carried the wrapped portrait to the huge living room where Mr. Zeus and his friends were waiting. Cliff and a few of my classmates were there too. I was surprised to see Angela present too. Why was she here?
Everyone, this is Beatrice, the talented young lady I've been telling you about.
Angela rolled her eyes. Seriously, why was she here? When he had everyone's attention, Mr. Zeus ripped the wrapping paper from the framed portrait, and everyone gasped. The room went deathly silent. Then, Mr. Zeus exploded.
Is this some kind of joke?
I stared at the portrait in horror. Mr. Zeus looked like a caricature with red horns growing out of his head. Angela! She gave me an evil smile.
Enjoy your 15 minutes of fame, sis.
Cameras flashed everywhere. Sometimes I really hate smartphones.
Get out of my house and take that horrible thing with you.
I turned to Cliff, but he looked just as angry as his grandfather. I'm so sorry. I had lost an opportunity to be rich and my boyfriend, all in one day. Someone drew giant horns on my locker. Cliff was ignoring me. I had no idea if he knew the entire truth. During lunch, I noticed Angela staring at Cliff, then drawing in her sketchbook. Instantly, I knew what she was doing. She was drawing him. Cliff got up with his tray and started to leave, but Angela ran to him, waving the paper in his face. She was going to show him the drawing and put the last nail in my coffin. Not on my watch. I bolted from my seat and managed to grab the paper before she could give it to Cliff. I tore it in half and threw it in the trash can.
What are you doing?
Without answering, I grabbed Cliff's hand to pull him out of there before he saw the sketch Angela had made of him.
Let go of my hand, Beatrice.
I dropped his hand and he reached for the ripped paper in the trash can. I watched as he put the two pieces together and realized what it was. He looked from me to Angela, waiting for an explanation.
Should I tell him or will you, B?
Angela looked so pleased with herself. Defeated, I fell to the ground and cried, revealing everything to Cliff. I begged him to forgive me, but he walked away angry. A few weeks later, Angela received a similar proposal as before, to draw a portrait of Grandfather Zeus and to be paid a hefty amount for it. Only this time, Cliff, who'd broken up with me, would be watching the process from beginning to end. Angela smiled and agreed to draw 2 different portraits for him. One to make up for the previous one, and the second which she would be paid for. I had no choice but to be supportive of my sister's good fortune, painful as it was.